Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Gardens, the Untold Story. Got your host, Ken Somerville, here, and we've got the invisible gardener, Andy Lopez. He's with us tonight, and let's talk about having your own worm farm. So, what do you want to tell people, Andy?
Okie dokie. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you why I have a worm farm, and what's the reason that I do a worm farm as opposed to making compost or any other thing. And then what we're really talking about is people want back. We did a show before. What's the best way to increase your soil biology? So the worm farm is one, and compost is another ideal way to increase, especially if you're making good quality. Vermiculture is another. Lots of different ways. But what I'm going to talk to you today specifically is about a worm farm and why I have a worm farm and what my idea of a worm farm is and what I actually do with it. Because I think once you guys and ladies find out that you can have a worm farm that will provide you something amazing that you can run a business off of and helping other people to increase their biology, you'll be doing it too. How's that?
Yeah.
I don't need to look and see. I can see you fine. Where are you?
You don't need to see, Andy. You just need to talk, right?
Oh.
Oh, there we are. Yeah. We're right in front of you. Yeah.
So vermiculture, right, is basically when you want to make compost using the worms. Okay? Mm-hmm. But a worm farm is because you are actually growing worms. Right? Yeah. You're farming worms. You want to have more and more worms. I remember in Florida, I got into worm farms in Florida, but it wasn't because I wasn't making good compost. I was. But I found that every place that I went to always would end up with a lot of worms. There'd be a lot of worms in there. And so one of the things I found out about is that I was actually using earthworm castings, which also had the eggs in it. And I was incorporating the earthworm castings, not in the compost making process, because it would have killed the eggs. But I didn't know, so I didn't consciously do that. Basically, what I would do is I would incorporate the earthworm castings when I make a hole, for example. I'm going to plant something. I'll take some of my compost and some of the earthworm castings, because it's a slightly acid pH, 6.5, I think, maybe a little lower, right? Earthworm castings. Whereas your compost is traditionally a little higher pH, 7.2, 7.4. It depends what you're adding in your compost, right? Because manure is also very, very. You would think that manure is acidic, but it actually turns out to be very alkaline. When you have a big pile of manure, I think it's the salt or something makes it very. I always saw horse manure, any kind of manure should be acid, because if urine is acid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't work out that way. But anyway, what I would do is I would add earthworm castings to the compost, mellow it down, bring it down to a pH. I would like the neutral or 6.8 pH. That's what you want to go for, 6.8. So I've learned that by doing that, I was involuntarily increasing the biology to increasing the worms, because there would be worm eggs in there. One of the things I distinctively remember, and I forget a lot of things, but they come back to me. So when I would buy the worm castings, it wasn't online. It was like I would run into somebody selling earthworm castings, right? Right. I remember this guy's name. His name's John Ebersol. I had talked to you about it because he's the very first guy that as a kid I would go to and buy stuff from, and he was using a form of rock dust. Remember I told you about rock dust? Did you remember the story I told you about this guy that introduced me to rock dust early on in my youth?
The guy who had the place on the one side of the highway and was getting fertilized.
That was the strawberry guy who was across the street from the rock quarry. This was a guy that my dad and I would drive to Homestead Farmers Market.
Okay.
Even as a kid, I said, I want the fruit. So you go get the mangoes. On my property, my parents, it wasn't like a luscious thing with mangoes and fruit and all kinds of stuff. It was like, you're kidding me, right? Nothing. And I didn't. And looking back, I said, well, why didn't I obviously didn't have the. When I went in the service, I went in when I was 17. So I don't remember having a massive yard with fruit and vegetables and all kinds of stuff like that. I didn't get into that. I had a little garden, a few things growing around, but I didn't really start heavily into it until I got out.
Right.
But I learned that. So when I would go by, this guy's place, and he had this organic. I would ask him about it. He would tell me that he's using this stuff called Fertrell. It's still available. Fertrell, Fertrell, and it actually comes from New Jersey, and it's really cool. Two things come out of New Jersey. It was really, really cool. This company called Fertrell, which is like it's the beginning of the rock dust, because they have some things that are powdered form in it that are very like rock dusty. Because rock dust is really, rock dust means anything that's been crushed into a powder. Oh my God, something happened. Are you there, man?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
It's just scary when you scare me when you do that, man. It's like I'm going, oh my God, the spaceship! I have to leave now. Oh, horror's coming at me. So Fertrell is amazing stuff because it has powder. It has ground up shells. It has by shells I mean eggshells. It has ground up seashells. It has other things ground up that they ground up into it, right? Different bones and different things. They even have New Jersey green sand in there. Because I asked her, hey, how come you got New Jersey? Yeah, you kidding me? No, wait. Here's a warning.
Young lady, you may as well put your question up. We don't do questions at the end. We try to do them as we're going through. So if you got a question on the worms,
I can do it. I can do it. I can do it now. So I just got an alert that my house is going to burn down any second now. I should leave. So I'm not going to worry about it. I tell people I am fire. Okay, so what's the question? I don't see the question.
No, she was saying she's got a question on worm farms when we get to the question section. So
this is the question section. The question section is anytime you spit it out. And that's the question.
Yeah.
Like in Star Trek, I'll question. So go ahead and spit your question out. So and I can talk and I can double thing. You know what do you call it? Double talk. I get a double talk. So it's still there, and they actually know about each other because green sand, New Jersey green sand, is another really mineral rich sea. It's from dead sea life, and so they put them together, and then they have a bunch of other things in it: soft rock phosphate, a couple other things in it, but no other rock dust. But it's actually a form of rock dust. So I use that one, and then he also told me about. I also have these worm castings. I said, well, yeah, well, what's all that? But it turns out it was worm poop, right? But it's a friendly way of saying worm poop. Because I say, well, what is it? He said, yeah, it's worm poop. I go, oh, okay. He showed me how he was, he has the worms. He would have to take them out, put them in a cage, turn it over a little bit, slowly but surely, all those. The worm stuff will fall out. The worms will stay in there. We take that, put them back in the bed, and then we have the worm castings. See, so
Tremel. I have one in my garage. A Tremel for when I do my worm casting.
Yeah. There's another one that shakes back and forth, leaves the worms. See the worms going. And they drops all the worm castings down. And I said, well, so I thought that's good because the poop of the worm is what I was into, right? I said, hey, that's great because I've always been. I had this fantasy with poop as a kid. I used to get poop and go, wow,
I don't think it's too much information, Andy. Okay.
I remember on the farm, go out, sit down, and go, oh wow, look at this. Flies are in it, mommy. Look at what does it smell? It's just that way I've always been. What does he say?
Okay. I want to worm farm in my house. I have about 3 gallons of food waste from the kitchen a week. How many worms does my farm need to eat that waste up? Okay, so here's what we're going to say. That you're not going to really have a worm farm. You're going to have a vermiculture. It's going to be vermiculture. So you're going to have a farm that you set up for that. And that's not what I'm talking about today. In the beginning, I started saying there's different reasons why you may have a worm farm. Okay, so some people have a worm farm to compost with. We can do that in another show. This is what you're going to do with your worm farm and how to compost. By the way, the thing to answer your question real fast is that basically, and this is from you have 3 gallons per week.
Okay, so
Mhm.
that's 3 gallons. So ideally, what you're going to need is a certain amount of because you want them to be able to digest it before you fill it up. You're going to eventually fill the whole thing up, and you're going to go, I can't put it anymore. I'm going to kill them. You will kill them if you start putting your compost in there, and if you wait too long, you have to give it to them before they rot. But basically, the size that I have is it's called a cattle trough, and it's a 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and 4 feet long, 6 feet long. That's the size of it. So that you can see the size of that cattle trough is basically 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, 2 feet high. That's how big it is. How much space you need in there. How many worms? So the thing is that that's the size that I have in my, because I do it for different reams. But you can have at least 100,000, 150,000 worms in there. When you first buy the worms, you can get 10, 20, 30, 40,000. You'd be surprised. It's like a little handful. You go, that's 10,000? Right?
Yeah.
Right? And so you're going to, then the worms will double. So you don't really need to buy 100,000 worms. You buy like maybe 10,000 worms or even 1,000 worms.
I
It
think they
depends if
sell
you
them
want.
generally by the pound, Andy. I know that's how I got mine was by
Right.
the pound.
They tell you on the bag how many worms, so you can say 10
Yeah,
pounds, they'll say
approximately
50,000
1
worms.
pound. Yeah.
Right, right. Say the number of pounds, but they'll tell you 10. So I buy them at Amazon, and they'll say, this is like 1,000 worms, 4,000 worms.
Yeah.
It depends on and then also the variety that you're going to buy makes a big difference too. So you want to
Yeah.
get the right variety, and it depends where you live at, which variety would do well, because you don't want it if you're living. Well, you didn't mention where you live at, but you can't do a worm farm in Canada unless you're doing it indoors. You can't most places unless you're living in a tropical environment are going to have to be done indoors, because the wintertime is going to kill your worm
Yeah, she
farm.
lives in Minnesota.
Yeah, and so you can't really have an outdoor worm farm. You have to maybe you haven't decided what shape or what you're going to do, but the cattle trough is a fairly easy thing to do. You can insulate it. You can have it indoors in the garage, up on stilts. And you want to keep the ants off. You have a way to keep the ants from getting it, and you could do it that way. There's so many different.
Andy, can I help out on the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Shawnee. I've had a worm farm in my home for years. I used a lot of different things, but generally just a plastic tub, cheap one from Walmart. Get yourself a pound of worms. Get your bedding, and if you're using compost, a good compost, that's going to be better. But what I would do with your 3 pounds of waste, grind it up, make it into more of a liquid form, so that it's a dissolved organic material. And then just put a 2-inch strip on the top,
I like
cover
that.
it up,
Yeah.
come back in 3 or 4 days, move that away. If the worms have consumed it, then you need to add more, and you're going to find the right balance, and
There you
your
go.
worms will find a balance for how much they're going
There
to
you go.
consume. They replicate every 21 days from putting out an egg to that egg hatching, but then those worms do take time to multiply. So I would take your material,
Grind it.
blend it up in a
Yeah,
blender so it's
that's the way
a
to do it.
liquid, and then just put that liquid on, and you can move your worms from one area of your bin to another just by, okay, you've got say a 2-foot bin in length. Start with the liquid over here. The next time you feed, move it over a few inches, move your worms down so they're moving through all the material. They're eating the biology more than anything else. You can see a worm in an apple, but it's going in, it's chewing through the pulp of the apple, but it's actually consuming the biology that exists inside that pulp. So you're feeding the worms biology, they're adding their biology, and that biology is coming out of the back end. The worm only consumes a very small portion of the biology that it ingests. The bulk of that biology comes out the other end. So you're just adding the biology from the worm itself, and that's super charging your worm castings with excess biology. So that answers that question, I hope.
I think that it's such it's great that you mentioned the liquefaction of the stuff,
Yeah.
because there's basically, it's a much simpler way, and you can actually do better with when if you liquefy, put it in the blender, make it into a nice liquid, and pour it into your bin. The worms will
Yeah.
like it better. I myself am playing around with doing something like that for my worm bin, because I don't really put in a mass of food in there. I usually give them the worms what they want. I give them an apple, a banana, some coffee grinds.
Yep.
Uh, but I have been thinking of, because I do have some kitchen waste that go out. I don't like throwing them away, but a long time ago in my distant past, I remember taking them to a blender and blending them up and pouring around the garden and giving. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's an ideal way to utilize. And then the 15, is it what she said? I think she said 3 gallons is nothing, because it disappears into a nice liquid mush, and you pour it down. The worst that will happen, you have a couple of those little bins to rotate through. I myself would love to be able to, and I'm the more I think about it, the more I like the idea, because they would get it. But I want to make sure that my liquid would get a better biological blend.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
the
the
more
more
different.
biology and the more diverse the biology is for the worms, the better. It's just like with everything, it's literally all about the biology. So, like, I know when I do a labs, the lactic acid bacteria, I'm converting milk into the labs, and you get a farmer's cheese on top. That's something else that you can actually feed to your chickens. You can also feed to your worms, because that's full of all types of biology, which is a great food. But there's a lot of different recipes that you can do, and you can look up online, look at all kinds of different videos for making what they call worm chow, that you can put into your worm bin to help feed your worms. But those ground up materials that from that you have in your kitchen are how would I put it, almost a delicacy on top of the worm chow.
Interesting too is that uh, that's what I'm starting to feed these chickens that I'm taking care of. I grind up everything and just pour it down around on the ground. They scrape it up and they eat it all up, so they like that too. So there must be something to that, and I like the idea of doing that with your to make the compost. And see, I only lived in Boulder for a little while, but I
Yeah.
found the advantage of when snow comes around to make that help you. You make your compost pile before it snows, and afterwards you have this gorgeous compost waiting for you, because Mother Nature will put it together for you. So that's really, really cool. I myself, I've been using compost. Well, I started doing compost teas for my business, and then I quickly moved up to. I did both in Florida. I did both compost teas, and I also made the compost and the worm. Yeah, the red wrigglers
Yeah.
are one of my favorite. I really like the African night crawlers. They're
They're
the
not
best.
so good for indoor composting,
Not
and
for
the red
indoors, but
wigglers are really good for that.
yeah, not for indoors. I haven't done indoors at all in a long time, so I guess you have to get to the little smaller ones.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Well,
they
there,
need more room.
Captain Jack, I think,
Captain Jack,
is
right,
the name on YouTube.
right.
Um, that he shows you step by step how he makes his worm chow, etc. You know what he's putting into it, etc. But there's a lot of like Greg here is saying, tropical worms will grow faster only if you're in the tropics.
Rolling in
Okay, if
the
you're up
tropics.
here in Canada, they ain't growing too well.
They're gonna
Okay.
die on you. They're gonna go, too cold, bye.
Oh yeah. But yeah,
So
Captain Jack, I think is the
yeah, and that's where I get
YouTube
my
channel.
African night crawlers from. Right, I get it from him. And he comes with a nice bag of his worm food, which is
Yeah.
really high protein stuff. Very, very, very nice. I made a liquid of it once to spray my plants. They
Well, and
like.
I know the gentleman I'm talking about, he does make his own liquids. He sells it at the farmers markets, etc. He's been doing it for several years, and he wants more people to do this. Start your own business, not necessarily even just using it on your own property, but to help others. And that's what Andy's really doing, because you're making your own, worm juice, and you're putting that into what you're doing on, your job as an arborist, going in and spraying the trees in people's gardens, that's life. But remember, you have to have the organic material for those worms to really get in there and do what is necessary. Captain Jack on YouTube, I'm pretty sure is
It is Captain Jack's, right? And they also on Amazon, if you type Captain Jack's worms, it'll come up the different bags and different sizes and the different types. Right now, he has the European red wigglers, and sometimes he'll have the night crawlers out there. Sometimes he'll have a couple of different varieties available, and he sells you the products to feed them with. And yeah, you can watch the YouTube video because he explains a lot on how to growing worms is a little bit of an art. You have to learn how to not kill them. You have to learn, because they will die if you give them junk food. They don't like toxins. Believe it or not, if you feed them things that are not organic, they won't live very long. They die a lot faster than if you give them organic food. This is my theory, but because I've never really, I have a chance to buy, organic carrots, 20 cents, regular carrots, 5 cents. Well, I just get the regular carrots. They won't know the difference. Well, I don't know. I want to be sure. I'll get the 20 cents once and make it worthwhile. See what I'm saying?
Well, the thing is, if there's pesticides and herbicides on the produce that you're growing and you're putting that in with your worms, it's going to kill the biology, which is going to kill your worms. So,
right. I also saw this article. The guy says that coffee is bad for worms. It kills the worms.
It does if you put too much. It's all about balance again.
It's also, too, if you use chemically grown coffee as opposed to organic coffee, because the chemically grown coffee has got 72 different chemicals in there that is going to kill the worms. Of course, if you should, worms won't grow in pure ground coffee grinds. So there's a limit as to how many coffee grinds. Oh, who's this?
Serena. We haven't seen Serena for a while. She's the young lady that is always cracking jokes on the channel. She's actually on your channel right now, Andy.
Oh my goodness! Wow, she must have made a wrong turn. Worms love banana leaves and stalks. When I go to the store, I buy 6 packs of organic bananas. And the guy said, "You really like bananas?" I said, "Yeah, but half of them for me, half of them for my worms." And I give it to them, just before they start to ripen up. I let it ripen a little bit. I slice both ends, but it'll slice up the middle and leave the thing the way it is. What I'll do next time, I'll take a video of the worms of the bananas when it looks like with the worms in it, because they would just eat all of that out, and they eventually eat the skin too. But they definitely go through the banana. And you should see them with a tomato. You just cut the core out and bury that. They go right in there.
Have you ever heard of avocado tech, Andy? Is that something that you've looked at?
Avocado tech?
Yeah, what they're doing is they're splitting the avocado in half and they're putting that down. And what happens is it forms a shell. The worms come out. They eat everything inside of it. So some people are putting other things than just the avocado in to give nutrients. You'll have a huge worm ball living inside. And remember, guys, that's when a worm breeds, is when they scrape against each other, they touch each other. That's how the worms breed. So it's a great way to really see how many worms you have and to even breed more worms. But it's avocado tech. You can do it with watermelon, anything that's got a pulpy flesh.
I might do that.
Kind of
I might just do that, but I have to take the seed out first. Like the seed takes up a big room of it.
Yeah.
I would love to figure out a way to take out the seed and then put the whole thing in there. So hollow. I bet you they would fill it up really nice. Because I know that if I was to cut the avocado in half, right, or a watermelon in half and put that buried, that whole half is covered. There's just nothing but the moving creatures. I think pretty soon too, I may have to take everybody out and split them up because there's too many of them already. See, that's the problem when you start overgrowth, right?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Andy, that in worms they'll actually regulate their own population.
Think so?
They will stop producing more worm eggs, etc., and balance the population out.
That's cool.
But if you want to have more worm farms, then yeah, you take out a bunch and you put them somewhere else. But you can do it in 5-gallon buckets if you have the right material inside that bucket. Your worms will eat that up within a few weeks, and you've got just straight worm castings that you can process, and put the worms in a new bucket. It's all depends on what you want to do. If you're making worm juice, that's a different way to do it. A lot of that is what Andy does. But if you're just going for straight worm castings, a lot of times the worm chow is a much better way to go because it's consistent food source. They go through it, and then you just transfer your worms to your next bucket, etc. But worms are fantastic. Like, I have dried worm castings that when Lily or I have an upset stomach, that we can take that, because it's all just pure worm castings and it's full of biology. We take that and all of a sudden our stomach problems go away. If you've taken antibiotics,
no wonder you look funny. No wonder you look a little funny.
I'm kind of wormy, man.
You've been looking a little wormish there, But I think that's a really great. I think that's a really great idea. It really is. And I didn't really. When I think about it, I never got. I think automatically I would say, well, there's more and more worms, more and more worms. Automatically I would say, well, maybe I should start. I wasn't aware that they would control themselves. I always think they just go out of hand, But to me, it was always, I can always find places to put these worms. I would either make another worm bin, make more juice, which I'm in the process of doing. That's one good reason to split them in half and put it over there. But also too, I would bury them in my raised beds. Put a hole in there and such and give them a handful in there. When I was in Florida, I would charge them by the bucket. Here's a bucket of worms, and the people will plant them in the garden and then they die. I said, well, what does that tell you, right? You can't just stick the worms.
The red wigglers, they're not designed to get cold and freeze. Where your other worms have the ability to go down. Like, we've got worms here that'll go down 6 or 7 feet, or 8 or 9 or 10 feet in the wintertime to get down to that worm zone so they can survive. So
it
really depends on the type of worm. And then some worms you're not supposed to be releasing them into the wild, as they would call it. But you got to check your own state or province if you're in Canada, or what your own country.
I never did that. I never even thought about that. I never even thought about it, because that would make sense if I bring something from Africa, which takes next thing you know, it ate all my children and the horse. There's a worm out there eating my chickens now. I guess I shouldn't have let him go. Yeah, that's a problem. But
worms are not native to North America.
No, they're not.
So the worms that we do have are really actually an invasive species, but then all of that is the potential of just birds traveling, etc., across our planet, or can be migrating and bringing the worms with them. So is it our humans that have done it? Is it the birds that have done it? Humans have the capacity to bring more things in quicker, but nature finds a way to do what she needs to do.
They're talking about finding a half a worm in your apple. That's gross.
Well, I know that was Serena's joke there. What's worse than finding a worm in your apple? Finding half a worm after you've taken a bite. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering why that was wiggling. I was wondering why that was wriggling. I hate it when it wiggles down your throat, though. That's no fun. I wonder if these worms, when they cut in half, make more worms, make 2 worms.
I've heard that as an old folklore, but I don't believe that they actually do. I think that they're just going to pass away. But a lot of creatures do have the potential to grow new parts. I would think the back half of the worm is going to die no matter what. The front half that has the brain, I guess you could call it, may, heal that up and keep going. But that's something that I'm not 100% sure of, Andy.
I think Serena is going nuts. Somebody should talk to her. I think she probably should drink a little more, compost tea. She's talking about compost tea. What do plants drink at social gatherings?
Compost
Okay.
tea. Yeah. For mine, they drink compost extract because that's just a stronger drink. They're into the hard stuff.
I like the Gondwana rainforest birds. Yeah, I like that.
One of rainforest birds and the old botanist and soiling horticulturist would gather soil to replenish the garden on the ships. Yep.
Right. There were pirates and people who sailed all over the place, and they took one thing. They would grow things on their ships, or they would have a garden that would go around collecting stuff. So humans are very good at spreading things around. Mother Nature does this too,
Yeah.
They have income in the world and dying off.
Well, you look at one of the experiments they did in Florida is they put up huge sticky nets, basically, and they actually, allowed just the winds to blow. They were picking up biology and seeds, etc., that were blowing in all the way from Africa, blowing into Florida. So, guys, that's how this stuff is transported. It's in the air. And I know Leighton's working on getting the lady onto the Soil Matters. That's her preferred methodology, is looking at the biology, etc., that's in the air that's flowing around our planet. So one of these days we're going to get her on to talk about that side of it, because it's really a new science that's just coming out of how much biology is literally in our air that we breathe.
So I've been doing a radio show for a long time. So I remember this is one episode where the person used to work for Monsanto. And he was in charge of developing the genetically modified corn.
Right.
And one of the things that they would do, Monsanto would sell the corn to other countries. So they would sell it to, say, New Mexico, right?
Right.
And of course, the corn didn't reproduce; it was sterile.
Yeah.
Right. So in Mexico, they didn't want to buy it because he said it's ridiculous. We've been making corn for centuries, and we don't need your stinking corn, right? Yeah. So they said no. They weren't going to do it, but they did it in Africa and other places. And here's what happened. So this guy's job was to travel around the world, basically, and I don't know how they did it, but they have ways of determining that the corn has their the modified gene in it, which is illegal for them to have, right? So somehow they took this farmer in Mexico, who's been doing their corn for centuries. They grow their own corn, and they found a gene from Monsanto in the corn in the field.
Yeah.
And the guy didn't put it there, but I think they tried to get lots of money and some stuff like that, but it was proven that just flew wherever they were doing it in the United States or wherever. It flew right there, and it could travel literally around the world. That's like coconuts will go for miles and miles from one part of the world and the ocean to somewhere else. So it's a definite interesting way that Mother Nature she's very good at recycling things all over the place. And that's why I learned from her why it's important to have biology from all over the place. Yeah. Right. The blend of the biology, the bigger more more boots on the ground, was more biology in your liquid. And so and the worms are just one type of biology. But because of what they do is that whatever they eat, it becomes their biology. So you can give them all kinds of biology which they will eat, and then it becomes the worm's biology. But in reality, it's a blend of all these biologies that the worms are going through. And the worms are very thorough in producing the type of nutrients needed by plants, because one of the things we both understand is that they are very rich in trace minerals, but they don't get to trace minerals out of nowhere. You get it from the biology you give them. Yeah. Not a good idea to feed them rock dust because they'll die because it's way too alkaline. And you might be able to put a tiny little bit in water, but if you do it often enough, you're going to change the pH of the. Yeah,
you want to put the rock dust and that in your compost. Let the biology break it down into the molecules. It'll make the biology that needs that in its structure, and then the worm eats that biology and gets that from that biology. But yeah, putting it into a worm bin is definitely the wrong thing to do.
The best results I've ever gotten, and this is why I do it this way, is that when I made my compost, I had 14 different types of rock dust in there. I had as many different animal manures. I had llama, I had sheep, I had rabbit, I had goat, elephant. I had, let's see, did I mention chicken? Probably there was a goat in there, a couple of goats, cows. There was llamas. So there was a whole bunch of different manures.
Yeah.
And my philosophy was it would be like a nice blend of all these different sources of trace minerals, which then the compost will compost down really, really well. The minerals will combine with the rich trace minerals. You have this minerally rich, bacterially rich product. That's the best compost that I want in my worm farm. I want the worms to go through that, process it one more time, and that liquid is absolutely amazing. You can almost drink it. I mean, I kind of feel sometimes this mineral is in such a biological form that I could drink it and I'll probably absorb it, even though I haven't really tried it because I can't tell. But it might, like you eating the earthworm casting, because you're eating the trace minerals.
Yeah. Anything that I fed to my worm bin, and I kept very care. I knew exactly what was going into my worm bin, so I knew I wasn't going to be having a problem with salmonella and things like that. But that pure biology that's in that worm casting, like that's how I was making my own worm juice. I spread it on my plants and my lawn, etc. And it doesn't take a lot to make yourself, a large volume of liquid. Like Andy, I think you said you were using a pound or so to do like what, 50 or 100 gallons.
No, I don't make. I mean, you mean the worm tea or the worm juice?
Well, if you were using worm tea, which you're taking your worms and just soaking that material, right?
No. So what I do is
you're doing the extract.
You're right. So what I do is I have the trough, the cattle troughs, right? Where the worms. You can have it so many. You can hold that. You can have it so many different ways that you can house that. I did that because it's convenient for me, real easy to do. So anytime you have worms in a container, you want to give them a bath, because eventually there will be too much toxins and it will kill them. So unless Mother Nature normally cleans them when it rains. So I imitate rain. I have filtered water. I give them a little bath. It percolates through their system and poops comes out. This is the worm juice that I use. And this mixture here gets added. Then I additionally add other things to it. Like I would add, for example, Michael's wood vinegar, a little bit of that. I would add some mycorrhiza to it. I would add some whatever other types of biology that I can get my hands on that I want. I would not be adding any more rock dust or anything along those lines. The only thing I add in addition to it that I would not add to the worm farm is the C90, because it's a salt product. You can't add salt to your worm farms, right? No matter how well it is. Even if a friend of mine put some in water and did that, that's no bueno. Because if you did it once, fine. But if you do it on a regular basis, you're going to end up with don't the worms drown. You have to, if you do too much water, you drown them off. So it's a bath, not a drowning. So in this big container, which the host must hold at least, well, I've moved before, it was like 25-gallon tubs. So it's 100 gallons. And it's not 100 gallons, because there are 5-gallon tubs, but you know how much they weigh differently. So you don't go by the gallon, you go by the weight, but I don't know how much they weigh, but there was 20 of them. 20 of those 5-gallon white tubs. I took everything out, 20 of them to fill this thing. And in that liquid, you're right. So in that, do we add worm casting to the hole we're planting in the garden, or fill it over the whole garden broadcast? No, I would put it into the hole. I would actually, if you have worm castings and you're doing your mixture, when you're making a hole in the ground, you're going to have some soil member. You have to have some compost, some good rich mixtures that you want to blend together. And with the worm castings, you blend it all together, and that's what goes in the ground, and there's where you plant directly in that.
Yeah, you can do it that way. Myself, I do kind of a double, because I'll take the worm castings, soak them, move them around. Like I use just pantyhose, ladies' pantyhose, put in a few handfuls, and I put that in a 5-gallon bucket, and I massage it. I get all the biology out of it. And then I put in, when I put a hole in, I put that, fill that in with water, let it soak in, and then you can also put in, some worm castings as well. But you can get the double benefit, because then you're getting, a dissolved organic material in there, as well as the physical as well.
Yeah, it's always good to have. That's one reason why I put the worms, the worm castings directly into my worm bin, because once I add the water, they get the same liquid results, and the water goes through them, and I end up with this liquid product. So, but if you don't have the worm farm or whatever, and you have worm castings, it's always better to add distilled water to it, and then you can use the liquid from that to pour into your hole that you're growing in, or you can even when you make the blend, add enough water. You want to have distilled clean water, not city water that will kill the biology. You want to have as much biology in there alive as you can. If you're going to be watering with city water, it's going to kill a whole bunch of them. You may have a few of them left, but it'd be much better if your water was already clean to use. And if you don't have a filter, a simple way to clean your city water is to put it in a 5-gallon tub and leave it on the sun. Stir it up on a regular basis. Let the vapors evaporate. You'll see that the more you agitate it, you can even bubble it through it. It will get rid of the 90% of these chemicals into the air. Just don't breathe it.
Yeah.
Okay, where was I? I forgot. I was talking about something. I forgot now. Right.
You were talking about worms in your head, and they were
in my head. I
gray matter in there, and
I'm getting this feeling that the worms are in my head. Yeah. What does it say? Worms are a grub caterpillar. They're talking about the Asian jumping worms
and army worms. And Lily says
no, they're not the same
they
thing.
are the same. So I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with either of those.
Right. I don't even know what it is because jumping worms. I thought all worm jumps. I've never seen a worm that didn't stay still when I poked it. They will go, oh. And army worms, I haven't the faintest idea what that is, but I do realize there are literally thousands of worm species around the world, just like there's always going to be a major change from one country to another country. So I remember worms from Puerto Rico and worms from Cuba are very different than worms here. I don't really remember, like, I can't go outside now and find worms. I might be lucky if I find a worm in this forest here somewhere buried real deep. There might be a few worms floating around now, because one of the things that I do, I end up leaving a trail of worms behind me. Wherever I go, there's more worms, right?
The Johnny Appleseed, only it's worms.
And that's really good, because that's one thing I do with my happens with my worm liquids is you get these worm eggs that end up in the liquid. I specifically have a sprayer that does not damage the biology or the worm eggs. It's a different kind of sprayer. They have a sprayer that uses a metal ball that compresses, that crushes everything, right? Or you have one that has a diaphragm that gently pushes the water through. I have the diaphragm, so it just pushes, and my spraying tip hose has to be big enough to allow the biology to go through, otherwise it would not pass through. And so when I'm spraying, there's two things I see that people either complain or they're happy about. I see these mushrooms are popping up everywhere, and everywhere I dig, there's worms. So someone's saying, what's going on here? This is awful. Other people are going, hey, this is great. It just depends where your attitude is for that day, right? What is this? Where? Podina. What's Podina?
Podina is a real problem down here.
What is that?
Not sure. Not a
army
name
worm.
I'm familiar with.
It's the army worms.
Okay.
Well, I think again too that if you go to a country and another country and they have something like army worms, and army worm they don't sound like they're real friendly. Some reason it tells me that you don't really want to have army worms. I'm not really sure, but maybe they'll come and attack you and eat you, or they'll probably do something weird. The point is that this is their turf. That's their turf. So you might as well get used to whatever happens there. So you have to just deal with it. So for me, I learned that it's really good to encourage more and more worms on your property and your soil. And if you're doing it for a business, one of the things you want to do is you tell people, we'll make your soil so healthy that the worms will start living there. And once your worms are living there, and then of course, to do that, you also have to deal with all the toxins. See, we can handle toxins, and I think worms can handle it. All the creatures can, but not in overabundance. Like if you're trying to get biology growing in your soil, and you want earthworms to grow in your soil, or you want to have a worm farm. That's one thing about the worm farm I want to tell you before I forget. It's very important. That's why I'm talking real fast, so I can get it right. It's because you cannot, remember I told you have to give it a bath. You do not use city water, or silly water. Maybe I should call it silly water.
Like silly lily, yeah.
City water, because it'll make the soil that the worms are growing in toxic, because the city water will percolate, will end up in your soil. And so and especially in your garden, you always want to have a garden filter. I like Michael's garden filter, very nice, but there are a whole bunch of the other ones out there. There's a Blue Boogie, and there's Garden Grow. Those are 3 right there, really good garden filters you can try out. They're all about the same price, same quality. But we know Michael. I know Michael, so I just buy his product because you want to support your friends. But when I started, I went to a hardware store and bought a shower filter, hooked it into the, so I told the guy I want to hook it up to my hose, and that filters it out. At least it's better than drinking.
And guys, we're just using the name Michael. That's Blue Sky Biochar, is Michael's company. So if you want a water filter, you can attach just your hose. He's got a lot of different products that are fantastic. So that's Blue Sky Biochar.
Right. I like his. I like a lot of his products. I buy his wood vinegar from him. I buy his charcoal products that he has are very good, very, very good. And you also have some really good mycorrhiza. I think it's called Bigfoot, one of the best on the market. He has a bunch of stuff. He has a really good, this is, Michael, you owe me some money for this commercial. He has a really good kit, refractometer kit.
Yeah, he's got the 5-blade scissors, which are fantastic. I know.
And a way to crush. And he gives you the refractometer at a good price, because you can go up to eBay or Amazon, buy a refractometer, $35, but that's all you get. You don't get anything else. You have to figure out how to make it work. This kit, not that much more money, but it has the scissors. It has a way to crush. It has a bunch of other things
as well, right? He's got a huge chart for you to use as well.
A chart, yeah. So it's a great kit. I wish I would have seen it. I wish he had it 20, 30 years ago. So I would start using it. It would save a lot of trouble in trying to figure out how to make things work, because I had to find some way to crush that stuff. I bought a motor, and tried to grind it.
Mortar and pestle, yeah.
That's what I would be doing with a little bit of distilled water, just to try to get the liquid up. So anyway, for me, and if you want to start a business, this is the easiest thing to do. Actually, 2 things. One, make the best compost, and make the best, and really have a really good worm farm going. If you do those 2 things, you're going to be supplying yourself with all you need to go out and sell it to your sell it as a service to your customers. That's what I do. I go on a monthly basis. So a long time ago, I used to do like whatever. How much you want to pay? Great. $20, great. Because it didn't cost me anything to make the liquid. And the compost is really easy to make. You don't have to be spending lots of money. You could do that, but in the long run, you make. And then 1 pound of compost can make hundreds of gallons of water of your tea if you do it right, because it keeps coming out. It's just not going to disappear on you anytime soon. So it's a really inexpensive way to do it. Eventually, what you do is you charge for your experience, as we talked about. You charge for your experience, because you get more and more experience at making really good tea. The best tea in the world will solve any problem, any diseases, any pests. So you have an ant problem, right? You sell your customers this. I will come and bring compost and mulch, apply to your property, and I will spray your property with this tea I made. And your property, as it becomes more and more alive and more healthy, you will not have an ant problem. And what you want to spray on your ants is this tea. Buy this tea. You can buy a pound of this tea. Make your own tea, compost tea. Or if you have a worm farm, sell them the juice. Spray the juice. That's what I do for best ant control. Is to spray the juice around, because the biology in the juice, you get that on the ants. Ants say, "Uh-oh."
That was the movie Tremors.
That
was the one with the big worms that were coming after everybody.
Yeah, that was Tremors. That was a big word. I love that because I really like worms. I go, oh boy, this is what you get, right?
Yeah,
and then Dune too has some big worms. Dune, right? Dune, they got some big worms.
Dune has the big worms. Yeah,
I like these big worms things because I think it's really cool. I'm into worms. I'm into worms and poop.
Yeah. So, Andy, have you ever heard of these hammerhead worms or army worms? Like, I know that Fried Pepper had them. He was saying if you can cut them 40 times, they'll all regrow back. You're saying he was using salt to get rid of them. Have you ever heard of these hammerhead worms?
I've been lucky enough to not have encountered them. I would think they sound more tropical than they do, in cold weather countries. I don't think they would survive on, so it's probably in a more tropical environment. Where was this guy calling from? I bet you it's some really cool tropical place, and you're going to get massive amounts of all kinds of incredible worms and creatures coming out of the woodwork. And you can't. The only way to control them was with biology. You have to learn what what kind of biology. The best biology is their own biology. So if you was to crush some of these worms, make a liquid out of it and spray it, I bet you they won't like that.
Well, Fried, and I know Serena's in the U.S. as well, but he's in Ohio. They're coming from the tropics, so I'm not sure how they've gotten here or anything like that. That's something you guys are going to have to seriously look at if they're a problem in your area and how to get rid of them.
And that's what happens too, because if they must have come in a fruit or something, so that that was shipped, and then they found a niche, a place where they can grow
from house plants from Asia. That's how they're getting here.
Right, and then they found a niche because the locals here have no idea what to do with them. They have no defense against them, so they're growing in a certain area because the environment is kind enough for them to survive in there, and they're getting all the food they need. And there are lots of different things you can do naturally if you want to know what to do to control. I would try food grade diatomaceous earth. Very simple.
Yeah.
Okay, I would try that first. Food grade diatomaceous earth. You can make a liquid out of it that when you spray it will coat an area, or at least an area, especially in the soil, with the diatomaceous earth. Now that's just taking care of the cost. It's in effect, because there's a reason why the niche is there. And so what I would do if it's your yard, I would concentrate on increasing a minerally rich biological compost. You're making really good compost. You have all the trace minerals in there, right? Put all the trace minerals, because I bet you anything, there are certain trace mineral deficiency in that niche. That's what makes the niche. It's that there's no calcium in this place, or whatever. You see what I mean? And one of the ways you can tell is by looking at what weeds are growing there. And it's a real simple way you can tell what the weeds are bringing back up. And I was telling somebody that the other day, and we have a few minutes, about a few seconds left or something. I would try to give you the best part towards the end, right? The best part.
What do we call weeds, Andy?
Medicinal plants for the soil. And
they'll let you know what's missing from your soil if they come up. It's
a real simple way. You take a picture of it, right? Especially if you have an iPhone, hit the I button. It says I, it's information. It tells you the name. Then look up the name. So come up with any weeds. You'll say whatever that weed is, and you look up the name of the weed. It'll tell you what is made, what minerals it has, and that's the mineral that your property is deficient in.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a scientist. You just say, take a picture, click on the eye. It's, this is a ragweed or whatever, and then look up. Tell me all about ragweed. It'll tell you it's rich in this, rich in that, rich in this. That is what's deficient in your soil, and that's what you need to key into, because that's the niche that makes these worms live there.
Yeah, it's all about balance. If you promote the indigenous, organisms there, whether that's the biology, whether that's worms, whether that's arthropods, etc., and fill in that niche, should be able to, or may be able to, get rid of an invasive species in that way. But those, remember, we plant seeds and we grow them in a certain area, and we want to promote that area, that those seeds and plants get better in that area. Well, these worms and other invasive species have that same potential to get used to living in that environment. So it's kind of a 50-50 thing, Andy.
He says, Serena says the BT kills worms too. So the thing is about BT is that it's not entirely selective. I don't know if these worms are actually beneficial or bad. It's just not normally found there. So I have a feeling the guy was saying they're bad because he didn't say what they did, other than he didn't say they're eating everything. They ate my dog. I don't know what's wrong with these worms. I have no idea if they're bad worms or they take over. They're just hanging out. Hey man, what's happening? You got some spare change? They're not, so it may not be necessarily bad. So we have to. I would say, tell me why is something bad about it, right?
Yeah, it's like like the Japanese stilt grass. It's taking over. It takes over an area, and nothing else can grow with it. It kills it all. Everything else. But I'm not sure what these worms are doing, if they're actually harming the environment or if they're just going to fit in and just work away like any other worm, which is designed to break up the soil, aerate your soil, etc. But Andy, we got 3 minutes left. I don't know. I know you're under an evacuation potential. You got the notice. You're supposed to be evacuating right now, so maybe we should cut it short here.
Here's what I want to do for everybody. Okay, so you guys should write down my email, Andy Lopez at invisiblegardener.com. Put up my name up there so you can spell it right. And in the email, you say, I just saw you're all about the biology, the worm farms thing. And you said you would give me, so that address, all you have to do is just say Andy Lopez at invisiblegardener.com. See, that would be my email. This is just a website. Actually, I prefer if you go to the website, you sign up for my newsletter, and and then when you sign up, you say, send me my book. What I'm going to do is I send you a free ebook. Everybody that wants to do this can get a free ebook. Just go to my website, subscribe to the newsletter, and you say, send me my free ebook because I'll have your email. I'll send it to you right back, a free ebook. Plus, we also can give a printed version of the book, which right now I'm getting closer because the last 3 days I've been without power and I can't do anything.
And like you got fires all the way around you. We're expecting your power to be cut off and you to be kicked out of your house at any time, Andy.
Yeah. So it's like I have the list. I'm working on it. And it's just life. I'm here in Malibu, surrounded with all kinds of things happening. It's like you can't stand still long enough. But I'm working on it. So I say, hey, anybody who wants the book, the ebook, that's an easy email return. Just click on it, send it back to you. And so we don't even need to do a contest because you're all going to win. It's the same thing, but in the ebook version. And if you ever want to get a print version, it's $20. You go up there, get it from my website through Amazon. It's a much bigger version. The color, you're going to get the color ebook version, not the color print version. The color print version, I have to do something special because I had it up on Amazon and people were reselling it, third-party selling it for $300. I said, why? People say, why is your book so expensive? I said, what do you mean? $300. I look at it, that's not me. That's it. So I call them up. Well, we feel so much knowledge. We're charging $300. I'm going, ah! So I told Amazon, I'll publish what I need. So it's not available, but if I want a book, and so it's $40 plus the shipping. I think Amazon's free shipping, but I can get it's $40 for the color version. It's a big one, but you'll see the PDF is in the color version. So if you go buy the book, if it's black and white, I was just warning you now because it's $20 for the black and white version. The color version, what I would literally like to do is actually ship it to my daughter-in-law, have her sign it because she's the artist. Ship it to me, I'll sign it, and then ship it to you. That book will be worth more because of the signatures than the book itself. I'm just saying.
Well,
So
with that, Andy, we're gonna
well,
take
there
off.
we
But
go.
guys, we got Christine. I think it's Christina Campbell coming on Friday with me from. She's from ALUS. They do water management. They have projects in Canada, and now they have a couple in the US. You guys aren't going to want to miss that one if you want to know how to not only save your water and purify your water, but how to, have water come back on your property. This is some of the stuff we're going to be talking about on Friday, 5 o'clock Mountain, 4 o'clock Pacific, which is, whatever, Eastern and all other places in the world, guys. So we're going to cut out for today, and I'll see you guys on Friday. Say bye, Andy.
Bye, Andy.